Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host, Michael Roser. And tonight, folks, I have a fantastic show ahead of us. My guest is a world-renowned medium. He is an accredited author with a best-selling book. Of course, we're going to get into that as well. And he is versed with clairvoyance and healing energy like nobody you've met. In all seriousness, folks, I'm very, very honored and privileged to introduce to you Stephen Hermann for tonight on Dark Hour Paranormal. We're going to be getting into the world of esoterica, healing, clairvoyance, psychic activity, some paranormal talk as well, and perhaps we'll even extend it into the extraterrestrial field. We will have to see how things go. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for joining us here this evening. I still can't hear myself over that intro, and I apologize because I don't know what I sound like. Very quickly, if you're here at the beginning of the show, I want to let you know that I will shout your name out and give you the acknowledgement. Cashew Gesundheit. Nice to see you, love. Aoterioa. I know I'm not saying that correctly, but welcome to the show. Long Island Bigfoot, my friend. It's good to see you. It's been a little while. Who else have we got here tonight so far? Brandy Phillips, good to see you. Thank you for coming back. We didn't scare you away too much last time, unlike Paul Tavares, who's gambling again this time, taking a listen in this evening. Kai Salis, I believe I've seen you here before. If I haven't, welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in and giving us a chance, guys. Renee Cruz, what's going on, my friend? And Tommy Frazier. Guys, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being here. So tonight, my guest is a very interesting individual, very versed in the world of what we talk about here on the show. And I am incredibly honored and, again, excited to introduce this person to you and have this discussion. Now, just a little bit of interest here. I found Stephen through my own research, looking through some old archives that a mentor of mine had established and had been put online at some point, and I came across this gentleman, and I couldn't believe how thorough his bio was, and I couldn't believe that I hadn't heard of him before. Now, that is more than likely my fault, because somebody who has the credentials and weight behind him, such gravity, undoubtedly is a name in many people's mouths throughout this world. So before we get to that, I'm going to read a quick introduction for Stephen, and we'll get going, guys. With more than 40 years of study and practice and training more than 10,000 people worldwide, the Reverend Stephen A. Hermann is a world-famous medium and with incredible talent. Stephen holds credentials as an ordained minister, certified medium, and teacher with the Nationalist Spiritualist Association of Churches, and has taught for the International Spiritualist Federation, and that is actually in the UK. A featured personality on television and radio worldwide, Stephen's highly detailed mediumship has been documented by the Associated Press and other news media. A former research medium for the University of Virginia, Stephen is the author of the #1 bestseller, Mediumship Mastery, The Mechanics of Receiving Spirit Communications, The Ultimate Guide. Man, that's an interesting book right there, let me tell you. Stephen also holds a BA degree from Hampshire College, Amherst, Massachusetts, from my state. We just figured that out. Based in Auckland, New Zealand. Well, I think he's in California now, but for the sake of the bio, Stephen travels extensively internationally, teaching and demonstrating spirit communication and healing. Now, in the description, you will find a link to Stephen's website wherein you can look and purchase his book. Also, it is available, I believe, on many other platforms, of which I will discuss with Stephen, and provide all sorts of links for you guys to check it out. Oh my gosh, Mr. Catfish, starting off the night right, $20 super chat. Thank you very much, my friend. It's great to see you back, and I appreciate you and all you do, as I expressed the last time we crossed paths, my friend. All right, so without further ado, as we frequently say here on the show, I'm going to introduce to you Steve Hermann. Steve, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Did I do that introduction justice? Did I do it
well,
okay?
I'm a Hermann, not a Harmon, but that's okay.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, Hermann. Thank you. You know, you try, you prepare, you read things out, and in the end, every once in a while, you're still going to make the mistake. But yeah, thank you very much for being here, my friend. This is going to be an interesting conversation. I could tell as soon as I started talking to you and corresponding through email. And since we've talked just briefly before the show, I still feel the same way. So how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm out in California. Of course, there's the time difference with you on the East Coast, but I'm really glad to be here. And I'm really happy that whoever's watching this live, and of course later on there'll be other people probably watching it once it's on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have a nice, healthy audience here for the live. And then, of course, in the archives, everybody goes back within the 5 or 6 days after the broadcast. Is just booming. So, yes, we are going to be reaching many folks tonight. So before we get into some of the meat of the topics I'd like to discuss with you, let's start on a more grounded station here. Man, I'm going to work on getting my words together because I'm slurring my tongue right now. I apologize. Jesus. Okay, so this is a question that a lot of people have had, even those who have been in the field for many years and have worked with certain things. What is the difference between psychics, clairvoyance, and mediumship, and how might the average person identify these traits within themselves?
Okay, well, that's a couple of different questions. First of all, everyone is psychic to an extent, aren't they? Right? Everyone's intuitive, and sometimes I say, you know, everyone has psychic ability, so everyone's a bit psychotic as well. Hopefully none of you people viewing this out there, but everybody has abilities in this way, and it's really not something which is extraordinary or special, or someone's so wonderful or marvelous because they have ability. It's just like art or music, and with the right type of training, anybody can learn to cultivate these things. Now, granted, there's going to be some people who are a bit more creative if they're to get into art. You know, there's some people maybe on a technical level, their proficiency seems a little bit more. But with mediumship, it's really natural, and so someone who's a psychic, they're basically just using their own natural intuitive sensitivities to the energy of people who are around them, the energy of the environment that they're in, and even the energy of objects. And with that sensitivity, they're able to respond to it. So, you know, we all have, you know, our mind, we have a physical body, but then we also have a subtle body, and the subtle body interpenetrates the physical body. And of course, we have the energy fields that are part of the subtle body system. So thoughts are things. So someone who's really sensitive, let's just say they work as a nurse, or they work in some caregiving occupation, it's pretty common for people in that situation just to end up picking up other stuff from other people. You know, maybe someone's really depressed, they start feeling depressed, or at least they're aware of the depression. You know, the person doesn't even have to look depressed or appear that way visibly. Or, you know, they can literally, maybe they're doing massage or nursing something, and they start feeling the conditions in their own body. You know, someone has a headache, they get a headache, or they have a pain in the knee and they start feeling it. So that's not mediumship, but that's using the natural sensitivity. I mean, we might have friends or people we're really close with, and you end up saying the same thing at the same time, or you're thinking of them, and then the phone rings. You say, so what exactly is taking place? Well, it's telepathic. So on a subtle level, thoughts and energy as a type of energy is just as solid as the chair that you might be sitting on or the floor you're standing on. And so someone who's a medium, what you're doing is you're using those natural innate psychic abilities to receive communications from the spirit world. And a medium is just someone who's an intermediary. So basically, with mental mediumship, it's mind-to-mind communication, and we communicate with personalities in the spirit world. So where's the spirit world? It's literally all around us, right? This physical world and the spirit dimensions, it's not like the spirit world's in some far off place. So what a medium is able to is they're able to raise their vibration, and they're able to dissociate from their mind and body, kind of get out of the way, so their mind's receptive. You're getting the analytical mind out of the way, and consequently, they're able to receive the thoughts and the impressions that are conveyed by personalities, and then they can articulate them. I mean, there's different types of mediumship which we can get into. Now, you mentioned clairvoyant. Well, clairvoyance just means clear seeing, which refers to the phase of mediumship in which you're able to see pictures. You receive communications in picture form from the spirit world. So that could be spirit people or any other type of imagery.
I was going to say, the word psychic has sort of become a dirty word as of late. It's sort of an umbrella statement for a lot of this phenomenon. And yet I do believe that these things could be categorized very cleanly and organized in a way that people can understand what facet it is that you're working with. How is somebody you know, look, I mean, you're mentioning here picking up things from your environment or perhaps from other people. To me, that's a sort of an empathic response. Again, you know, putting a label to it. But where might that sit in between the clairvoyance, you know, being psychic or anything along those lines? I mean, I think the reason I'm pushing this is because a lot of people want to be able to categorize it enough to say, okay, this is what this is. This is what this is. I'm leaning more towards empathy, or I have, you know, spirits come to me, I see visually. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the thing is in order to work with mediumship, you're using your psychic ability. But to work as a psychic, you're not necessarily getting information. I mean, the difference is someone who's a medium is they're establishing a telepathic and energetic link with individuals who are giving them the information. So that's the source of the information is different. Now, with psychic information, it's really just an energetic connection with the energy of a person, you know, the energy field around them, or an object.
Would somebody who has psychic ability and doing a reading, would they be perhaps inferring something that they're feeling or seeing within that person's auric field?
Yeah, exactly. Because you can tune into, you know, thoughts are things, and you know, there's information in the aura, so someone can get it that way. I mean, the other thing too, sometimes, you know, you have someone who they're doing a psychic reading and they're not even aware of it, but they're getting the information from the spirit world too. You know, there's sort of like a cross that takes place with this. And I think sometimes too, you do have people who are into mediumship, and they might even look down on psychics. But of course, you can't be a medium without being a psychic. It's just a snobbery type of thing. That some people
that's interesting. And I do have a question based around that. We'll get to in a little bit, because that is very curious topic there. That sort of interwar, I should say, when it comes to certain words.
Well, with mediumship, I mean, most, in a general sense, most people don't really understand much about it, or they really have a lot of weird conceptions about it. Just, you know, just based on not being exposed to it, or what they are exposed to tends to be what they see in television or in the movies. And we know that movies are pretty sensationalistic and really don't accurately depict what it's about. It's because it's entertainment. So people have a lot of ideas about it that just aren't really based on where it is. And unfortunately, what you see in the media, generally speaking, doesn't always portray things pretty well either. But it is totally natural. It's not something which is scary. Everybody has this ability. And it's a really good thing. And really the idea behind it is, you know, is to help people to get in touch with themselves, help people to get in touch with God, you know, to grow on a soul type of level while they're here. But I mean, you can definitely work with mediumship and not even work on a high level. You know, you could just open up to the spirits, let anyone come through, and that's not necessarily using it in a spiritual manner or on a higher level. It's kind of like how you go about doing it.
Yeah, I believe I've seen and met people that, you know, are very open, but have no idea that that's where they're standing. And sometimes they're pulling in things, or they're saying something inspirational or not, but you know that it comes from somewhere else. It's not from that personality. Of course, in, you know, coming to that sort of conclusion, you must know the person a little bit. And I do think that I've met some folks this way. Well, how does clairvoyance and mediumship work for you? Because I've interviewed and talked to a lot of different people who have similar methods about going into maybe a trance, or, you know, they just quiet the mind, or they're meditating on a regular basis. You know, there are many different things that people do and different ways that they get into the mediumship. So how does that work for you? And then I'm going to, well, I'll start there, and then I'll follow up with something.
Yeah, well, with mediumship, I mean, all types of mediumship. And there's lots of different phases of mediumship, or types of mediumship. So with mediumship, it all involves altered states of consciousness. I mean, even my mind is totally open like this. Let's just bring stuff through. If you were to measure my brain waves and things of this sort, I'm going to be in an altered state of consciousness. You know, there's various degrees of that. But there's also, with any kind of mediumship, various degrees or levels of control or influence from the spirit world. So when you receive information, for example, if I'm going to work receiving information mentally, actually everything on an inner level goes into the fight or flight. All the physiological systems. You know, my heart rate starts. The whole nervous system is affected by it. And in the spirit world, it's actually a much faster, quicker rate of vibration. So the information, it comes in really, 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 really quickly. And I have to like just spit it out, like articulate it. You know, I tend to work pretty quickly when I receive information. So if there's things that need to be translated, you know, interpreted, or, you know, put into the right context, expressed the right way, because you can get very abstract ideas that they might come through with, and you have to put it in a language that whoever the recipient is going to be able to understand. So I always feel as high as a kite. I've never taken any kind of drugs in my life, never smoked marijuana. I've never had a beer in my life. I'm really not into that. But I can tell you, when you get into mediumship, it's this higher, exhilarating, loving vibration. If you're really working on a higher type of level, it's like you're standing in the presence of this power. So like I say, high as a kite, I mean, you're really charged up with energy. Everything speeds up, the whole nervous system. So my blood sugar is even affected. You know, I have to you know, eat something afterwards. Generally, you know, drinking a lot of water and stuff too. But yeah, I'm definitely very hungry after I work, which is pretty typical for mediums. And and then of course I kind of come back down, you know, out of that state. But literally, even before I start working, let's say I'm going to do some type of demonstration of mediumship, maybe with a lot of people, where I know I'm going to start working, I'll feel it in the area of my solar plexus. Just this, almost like this nervous type of energy. I'll start pacing back and forth. It's not nervousness because I have to talk in front of a group of people, that kind of nervousness. It's just because they're already starting to work with me, right? And then my energy field expands, and they work through the energy field, and then they put the thoughts into my mind. So the psychic senses correspond to our 5 physical senses. So some of the information is, you know, the clairvoyance, and I might see the spirits, you know, I'll different visuals they might show me, and which I'll describe simultaneously with clairsentience, with feeling and sensing. I'll feel the information as well. Now, sometimes even with the, generally speaking, if you get a clairvoyant image, there's a feeling that goes with it too, as to the meaning of the image and the idea behind it. But I'll feel in my own body. So I think your physical build's a bit different than mine, I'm sure. And, you know, if you were coming in, I'd feel as your build. If you're missing a leg, I'd feel mentally a sense of missing a leg. Let's say it was on my left side, you know, knee down. I might feel, you know, that I'm missing 2 fingers on one hand if you'd cut your fingers off. And I would even make gestures or mannerisms like you know, my body language. Someone watching, I go, my God, I know that. That's that guy who was on the dark hour. And they know who it was. And, you know, if there's conditions of how you passed, well, I would feel those conditions. And I would describe your character, the attributes about you, your personality to a T. And someone would go, my God, that's my 3rd husband. He's coming through. And they'd recognize you.
So they're placing it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Describe you to a T. Now, it's through feeling. It's through the sensing. Do you understand? Now, simultaneously, you can be getting the images too. Now, you can also mentally hear. So, I mean, let's just say you're really into rap music. I don't know why anyone would be too heavily into rap music. But, you know, they're bringing through rap music, right? And, you know, I might hear that stuff playing. I mean, it's really bad because you get a lot of people coming through from, you know, whose real focus is like the late 70s or 1980s, and they like disco. And I get to hear that stuff. But, I mean, so it definitely is. It's very interesting. So, you know, you might hear music. You might hear words or sentences. You know, it kind of depends on her names, you know, this type of thing. Now, I remember one time I was working with one of my students. Actually, she's a Massachusetts. She's a medium. For many years, she started out, oh gosh, about 25 years ago. But, you know, I remember giving her a reading once. And when I connected to the spirit world, I mean, the first thing I heard was an explosion. And, you know, I remember, I heard the name. You know, I started describing the personality of the person right after that as well. Now, it was her grandfather. Now, the explosion really was the guy literally farting. Now, he used to do this around the house all the time. You know, it was like a joke. You gotta be kidding me. An off-color type of joke within the family. So that's how he came through. Now, that's why, generally speaking, when I'm working, I don't remember the information because I just spit it out. I try to keep my analytical mind out of it. But for teaching purposes, I do remember that because it's an interesting anecdote on types of sounds. And you know, you can have literally, you know, large explosions too. If there was someone was in the military, you know, maybe they were involved in artillery or, you know, firearms, this type of thing, you know, you'll hear stuff like that. Now, simultaneously, you get smells, you get tastes. I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat any meat, but let's say your grandfather ran the greasy fried chicken joint, you feel it shoved in your mouth, which is really repulsive.
Interesting.
Now, smells are interesting because you get a lot of perfumes, obviously tobacco, the cigars, the Havana cigars, and the cigarettes, marijuana and stuff like this that people would take. But yeah, actually, I remember one time, this is also in Massachusetts, I used to be for many years, ran stuff up there. And I remember I had a group of ladies, and I connected to the spirit world. I smelled something absolutely disgusting. And I felt like my belly was a bit bigger. And I was aware of a gentleman coming from the world of spirit. And I was aware, I felt like I was wearing some type of undershirt that hadn't been changed in a couple of weeks. Now, this is their dad. So let's just say he didn't have very good hygiene. It's not like he's still that way in the spirit world, but in an evidential sense, in other words, for the recognition, they'll present things like that. Now, along with all of that, you have claircognizance, where the information is just downloaded into your head, like instantaneously, the message, you just, the whole knowing, the total understanding of it. So it's a little bit of all of those modes to get, depending how they're presenting things, and you just give it out. And with mediumship, I just say things as a statement. I don't ask all these questions. I always tell people, just like if you go to the zoo, you don't want to feed the animals. So if you go to a medium, you don't want to feed the medium, do you? Go to Yellowstone Park, don't feed the bears or don't feed the animals. So with mediumship, you really don't need to tell a medium anything other than, let's just say you really don't understand. Because I could be working with somebody that just don't have a clue what I'm talking about. In which case, if they were to stop me, I can go back to the spirit world and get clarification. But one of the things, there's quite a few television mediums. I used to teach in this one college up in Massachusetts, and I just had unlimited, I could just make copies for all my classes, from the copy center there on campus. So I took advantage of it because students love handouts. And I had these critiques of mediums by skeptics. And they would watch these television mediums. Then they'd go through the transcript and say, oh, this person had, they asked 39 questions in 2 minutes, and none of them were hits. They were all, they're just analyze it all and tear these poor people apart. Now, the thing is that their criticisms, though, are very valid because you have these mediums. Does anyone here know someone with the letter J in their name? How many people with the letter J in your name do you know in spirit? Does anyone know someone?
Cold reading, I believe.
Does anybody know someone with the letter E in their name? I've got a number of E's in my name. Who do you know who like to drink water? Do you know a lady who used to like to drive a car, who's passed over? So some mediums, and they're very sincere. But it just has to do with their training or lack of training. They'll ask a lot of questions like this. What's coming through might be really dynamite, really good stuff and really beneficial. But you can imagine if you're skeptical, these people are cold reading, they're a bunch of quacks, and you're being duped. You're having me on the dark hour. Paranormal. I'm just a quack, pseudoscientist. I'm coming in here to deceive people. But this is what some people think. I'm a rationalist, that stuff is just baloney,
Well, what are your thoughts on somebody like Uri Geller, who, for all intents and purposes was going around saying that what he was doing was actually real. And yet, today we still can't prove it either way, but we have a lot more to work with in the realm of magic and illusion and how some of those things are pulled off.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about him?
I remember one gentleman I know in Connecticut, and he was a magician. He did kids' birthday parties. I was over at his house one day, and his library. So he had this whole encyclopedia of stage magic, and one whole volume was on phony spirit phenomena, which is really, really, pretty cool stuff. So if we go back in the history of the spiritualist movement, which actually started March 31st, 1848, and spread worldwide. You have a lot of physical phenomena, this type of thing, which physical mediumship's different than what I've been talking about, which is mental mediumship. With physical mediumship, it's dependent on the chemistry of the medium and of the other people involved, and it's you experience it objectively through your 5 physical senses. So with what
would that be something like channeling?
Well, no, channeling's mental. It's the
still mental
experience. Okay. Yeah, subjective experience of the medium. So I could be saying, I see Huey, Dewey, and Louie around you, 3 little ducks. And you know that I'm disturbed after I said that, because they're, you know, those are the nephews of Donald Duck, right? You know,
Oh,
all
yes.
wearing little sailor outfits. Now, but so you can have some totally deluded, really sincere, but they're just deluded, or just totally baloney, fabricating stuff, you know. But in any case, it's the mind. It's taking place inside the mind of the medium. Their emotions are involved, their intellect's involved, their spirituality's involved. You know, like attracts like. So that's a bit different than physical mediumship. So physical mediumship, you know, something levitates to the ceiling. You have ectoplasm and phenomena. You can hear the spirit voices speaking. You know, with your physical ears, tangible. You can see the spirits. Yeah, it's completely objective physical, and it's based on the energy and the chemistry. Now, with both mental mediumship and physical mediumship, there's a lot of different types, and you can fake any of those things. And if you go back historically, lots of fraudulence. It's just anything like this. The other thing is you have people like myself, you know, maybe they're really genuine and, you know, they need to produce stuff, or they just don't have good ethics. So it's pretty easy. I mean, if I wanted to be really, 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 really fake, you know, and just tell people baloney, I could do that. And there'd be people who would be not very discerning, really, really gullible, and just listen to whatever I said, you see. So I think it's that way. In any field, someone could be that way. But the problem with this type of stuff is you get people into it, and, you know, they develop some type of mystic power. Say, wow, you know, they can show people all the sensationalistic stuff, or tell people things, you know, having control. You know, should I leave my husband? You know, run off with a man at work. You know, so that, you know, it's got to be as authority. So people oftentimes psychologically, they like being in that type of position. So it really can lead to people not necessarily having, well, not lead to it, but, you know, you have people who don't have really good ethics or morals, or they're not coming from a higher type of place. And then consequently, how they approach it isn't going to be coming from a good place. And you definitely have some people that are just kind of crooks, and they get into it from that type of angle. A very good book to read, which I recommend to all my students, it's called The Psychic Mafia. Have you ever heard about that?
I've heard the title, but I've never read it.
No, I remember when it came out. I remember back in 1976, I saw it at the mall. I was like, wow, The Psychic Mafia. So yeah, it's about this one medium. His name was Lamar Keen, and he was from Tampa, Florida. And so he and his partner, this is back in like 1956, about that time period, they got involved in spiritualism. And they ended up kind of having their own church. And then they also are affiliated with Camp Chesterfield, which is a spiritualist community out in Indiana. And basically, the book just talks about all the different phony type of phenomena they did, and ways they ripped people off. And the reason why it's called Psychic Mafia is because the mediums would share the information with each other. Like, let's just say you were a medium, and, you know, I'm a medium, and, you know, you were maybe coming to my church to work, or this type of thing. Well, I would have files and all the people, so I would share it with you. And then you could, you know, you'd know which loved ones to bring through, or which guides to bring through. Does that make sense? And other details about their life? Yeah. So that type of stuff historically has gone on, and, you know, there's still, depending where you go, there's people that do stuff like that, which is why you want to use your intelligence, and you want to test the medium and test the spirit world too. Don't want to be gullible. That's why God gave us intelligence.
No, you know what? It's interesting, and you've brought up this word God, and of course this is now a very expansive word. It doesn't necessarily have to be linked with any sort of one religion. But let me ask you a little bit about your upbringing and how you started getting into this. At what point in your life did you begin to experience a connection to spirit, wherein you realized something, at least at that moment, was extraordinary, and this was happening to you, or you started to develop it? Where did you begin?
The first time the spirit world ever talked to me was when I was 2 years old. So my mom's dad talked to me, and so I had a lot of different, you know, experiences in terms of you know, psychic, or, you know, connection with the spirit world. I was always pretty sensitive. I learned how to meditate when I was little, and started getting into things. So I was really drawn to this, and I don't really think, like I said, I don't think of it as really being what is it, like, extraordinary or anything either. That's one of the things I try to, like, stay away from, because I really just want people not to think of it as being something that's like high up on a pedestal. Everybody has these abilities, and really just because someone is a medium doesn't make them like more advanced spiritually or somehow highly elevated compared to somebody else.
I think a lot of people believe the opposite. They see somebody like that, they put them on a pedestal in respect, saying they must know something more esoteric than I do.
Which just isn't the case. I mean, it's just a skill, you know, and it's something that you can really help people with if you go about it the right way. And it certainly is something I think on a personal level, if someone is working with it, it really ideally is going to be something that will help that person improve their life as well. Because we all have guidance. The spirit world's around us, and God's within our heart, but also there's certainly higher spirits that can influence us and try to steer us and along the path, and help us to make better decisions and choices in our lives. So the more someone opens themselves up that way, they spend time meditating, quieting the mind, and really genuinely trying to improve themselves, well, they're going to be influenced. And a big aspect of mediumship is healing. Of course, healing isn't just trying to fix the body, is it? It's really helping people, emotionally, mentally, and ultimately, it's connecting us, with the higher power and everything. And so I think if someone is very sincere, they're going to attract personalities in the spirit world that work with healing, that will impart, this higher vibration. Just like when you're around someone, maybe you might feel really calm, you feel really uplifted by being in their presence. Someone like that naturally attracts these spirits to work with them, through their energy field. And it's not really about technique. You could have different healthcare providers or people, healing practitioners who might work various modalities, but a lot of it's just with the words that someone might say, but then the energy that's going to be conveyed as well. Because all of us have a lot of gifts spiritually, and we can really impact the people around us to the extent that we're open to it.
Well, it's really interesting to look at this as an entire subject and say, yes, everybody has the ability to be clairvoyant or develop their psychic awareness or what have you. I think it's very curious that we might be the only species that we're familiar with that didn't come in with a complete set of tools to really understand the environment and the senses. I mean, I'm not necessarily suggesting the deer standing in the field is channeling somebody who's passed away, but they're much more in tune, or at least it appears to be that way, with their extra sensory perception.
Yeah, that's
otherwise.
true. That's because in this culture, indigenous cultures tend to really place a lot of more emphasis and understanding of the psychic abilities, of the natural abilities this way, whereas what happens here, there's a lot of emphasis in our modern society just on the analytical mind. So people are taught that it doesn't exist. It's devalued. It's not really given value or importance the same way. And just people are out of touch with it. I mean, the worst case are engineers. I don't know if you know any engineers, or
I do.
I mean, sometimes I'll ask people, is anyone here an engineer, or is anyone married to an engineer? And usually a few people are married to engineers. It's this anal retention that takes place. Now, you need that if you're going to design a jet and you work for Boeing. But if you really want to work with the spirit world, you have to work with your heart too. You have to be in touch. And, so the analytical is really important because it's necessary for certain things. And we definitely don't want to throw out our intelligence or discernment ability when it comes to these types of things.
No, I think you'd want a nice even balance between the left side and the right side.
There, happy medium.
I think that's where we would thrive most, sitting between those two pillars of, logic and intuition, utilizing both in, again, a very balanced fashion. What are your thoughts on channeling figures from history, whether they be political, entertainment-based, or otherwise? This is something I've seen come up quite often. And I'll be honest, when I first came across it, it sort of shocked me. I didn't think that this was something that was accessible at the time.
You mean like Elvis, or?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You could
or
pick
Mussolini,
anyone,
or Adolf Hitler,
yes,
or John F. Kennedy, or I mean, I guess the big thing with any of this stuff is you have to kind of take stuff for what it is, and you also have to really, I think it's always a good thing to question things and not just because someone says something's channeled doesn't necessarily mean that it's genuine.
Correct.
Doesn't mean that it's not, but you don't just because, oh, I'm a medium and I say this, whether it's purported to be from someone famous or a celebrity, or it could just be anything, you know, in terms of giving advice. Or let's say I describe, you know, some relative or something. Well, if I give you information about that person that I have no understanding of, maybe you don't even know, then you go talk to your mom and she goes, oh yeah, that was your uncle and he was exactly like that, you see? That's something which we kind of validate. But if I just say, oh my God, I'm connected with Martin Luther King Jr. He's around you, helping you. Well, maybe he really is. You know, he's helping you with the show. He's really big fan of Martin Luther King Jr., The Dark Hour. People didn't know that about him, but he really liked this kind of stuff. But he had to keep it secret at the time. If he were still here physically, he'd be, you know, on the show as a guest, you know, ghost hunting or something. So, you know, people...
More like an observer.
Right. So it's one of these things where people get really attracted to, like, the names of celebrities, or you've probably run into people who name drop. You know, like they run into some musician and they'll tell you all that. I was hanging out backstage. You know, I was at the Aerosmith concert and I did coke with the entire band. They tell everyone about it, right?
Yes.
Now the thing with that is this: why are they saying that? I mean, who cares? But people will do that, right? Or you know, I was in Washington D.C. today, and you know, Joseph Biden, I met him and he invited me into the, and you know, maybe you really did, you know everyone in the White House, or I ran to Donald Trump today, you know, so people will like name drop about stuff, or I ran into a celebrity, you know, came through at the McDonald's that I worked at, and wow. So that's just human. No criticism with that, but they do the same thing with the mediumship type stuff. All right.
I see the parallel you're drawing here.
Yeah. I mean this in a nice way. Now I can tell you, you know, in my own experiences, I've had people come to me for sessions. I've worked with people, and there have been different times people who were, I guess you would say, very prominent or celebrities have come through. You know, and they're just people like, and actually, I wouldn't have been aware of who I was describing or who was coming through and giving me, you know, but the people, because they would have had association, would know the people really, really, really well, you know. I can think of a number, quite a few times actually, this kind of thing happens, you know. And it's probably happened times I didn't even realize it did happen because the people never told me, you know, the recipients, whoever I was bringing through, that kind of thing too. I know there's this one medium I used to know, and he's from Canada, but he used to do a lot of work at Lilydale, New York, which is a spiritualist camp in Western New York, west of Buffalo. And they have like these large outdoor meetings. So he was doing a meeting one summer, you know, this really large crowd, and he brought through this man from the spirit world, a message for this one gentleman in the congregation. And the guy recognized who it was and could identify the spirit who was coming through. Now the spirit had, I guess, they'd been neighbors or somehow lived close to each other in the Buffalo, New York area going back to the 1940s. And the individual coming through was Albert Einstein. But when Albert Einstein came through, you know, he didn't start, oh, I'm Albert Einstein and all this stuff like that. Right. You see? So, and I can tell you my own experiences, I've had those types of experiences. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't have someone come through and say, hey, I'm Albert Einstein. But I guess I would always kind of want to analyze what they're saying, but also are they able to provide some type of something to confirm who they are? Just like if I called you up and I said that I'm Mick Jagger and I'm calling you up, you know, this isn't Mick Jagger. But, you know, if it was, unless I had a British accent, you'd want to ask me questions, right? Just to confirm, because you'd probably
just to
be
verify,
just to verify it. So so people will name drop about stuff like this. Now that's not saying they're not genuine with it, but I think it's a good practice for people to question things like that, you know, and just take it for what it is and everything. Now, keep in mind.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that with mediumship, you know, it goes through the mind of the medium. So you hear, let's say we have, you know, like channeling or trance channeling, you know, like speaking to the medium. I mean, generally speaking, it's not like the medium's going to be totally unconscious and not aware of what's going on. And with that, it's like a composite of the medium and the spirit or spirits that are coming through. So like, let's say, you know, I was your medium, you were in the spirit world, and you were going to control me and let's say speak philosophy through me or something. Well, it might only be 15% you and the rest is all me. It's like
That's the
it's like a
filter.
combination, you see? And the more the medium can kind of get out of the way and the more of the spirit that can be expressed, it really has a lot to do with, you know, the accuracy of it, or the people will receive something that's channeled, and they don't really stop to consider, well, wait a minute, this is also the medium, you see. But many mediums, because they like to exaggerate things, will say, oh, well, I was totally unconscious, I didn't know what was going on, I didn't hear anything. But really, they're totally aware of what's going on. In fact, a lot of it's just their own mind that's producing all this stuff. You see?
Well, unless you're Edgar Casey, who, you know, obviously goes into some sort of trance-like
Yeah,
state
he was
to
really
do his
deep.
reading. Yeah, there was something different there, I think, in his approach. Very quickly, I have a question from the chat room here. Brandy Phillips says, DHP, please ask Steve if he can get this info from a person over the phone or internet, or does he have to be in their presence? Now, this is a great opportunity to talk a little bit about how distance and perhaps, you know, the certain time doesn't necessarily affect our healing work or anything like that, if you would like to go into a little detail there.
Yeah, sure. Well, mediumship, I mean, first of all, you know, we talk about time and space. We were talking about Einstein before, time's relative. We send someone in outer space and they come back and everyone's aged, and they've only aged the year that they were gone, this type of thing. So in the spirit world, they're around us and they're aware of what's going on in your life. So in terms of doing a session, I mean, gosh, I mean, I work internationally. I mean, I travel like all over the world in person with the whole pandemic thing. Most of the stuff I've been doing, you know, on the phone or online, you know, like Zoom or this type of thing. So it's pretty common to work with clients. Let's say you're working on the phone. Now, the voice vibration strengthens the connection, sound vibration, but the information can come right through from spirit. And if the energy is good, it's going to work really well. It's going to be very dynamic. So they're not limited by time and space quite the same way. Now, we have the speed of sound, you know, and sometimes you have a plane that breaks the sound barrier. You can hear the boom after it flies overhead. You look at these stars at night, what do you see? Well, you're seeing thousands of years ago, the light finally reaches us, right? The speed of light is very fast. The speed of thought's faster than either of those things. So if you really love someone and you care about someone, you've kicked the bucket, right? You're in the spirit dimension. They're having a problem. You've got this energetic and mental connection with them. So you don't have to necessarily be there to be aware of what's going on, but in an instant, you can be there, literally. You can travel just like that. In fact, if you work on out-of-body travel, I teach a lot of workshops on out-of-body travel. So you can literally go out of your body, in your subtle body, and you can, you know, where you want to go, you want to visit someone, and it's like blur on either side of you because you're going that quickly to the destination.
Are you astral projecting in this way, or are you doing some sort of projection travel where you're not necessarily completely out of your body? How do I want to phrase this here? Yeah, okay. Are you doing actual astral projection the way that we would define it, wherein the spirit leaves the body, is still connected by that small tether, and you can interact and go anywhere you'd like?
Yeah, there's two things. Okay, there's astral travel, which is, and then there's also traveling clairvoyance or remote viewing, which is different. All right, so astral travel is you're literally going out and you're projecting yourself out. So that's what I was just talking about. Now you can also, because there's different ways of working with your subtle senses or clairvoyance, you can also have, you know, you're still in one location, but you can project your awareness. And you know, sometimes what we call traveling clairvoyant, I mean, often is really confused because people don't know the difference between those things, but one can lead to the next. You know, someone starts out with the whole seeing things at a distance, and then they project themselves out that way as well. But all that stuff can be taught as well, which is pretty cool.
No, that's really cool, because a lot of people have those questions. You know, how can I get into this? Where can I find more information that I can use and make applicable for my life, given who I am and what I've gone through? So to know that it is possible that anybody can do this, and it's not necessarily something supernatural, it's not extraordinary, it's just another facet that we have as intrinsic as the senses that we're familiar with. Well, that's very interesting. It's just a case of developing it at that point, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really into the teaching aspect of it, though, too. So I'm really glad to be able to be on your show because, you know, if it helps people understand it a little bit better, that's a really good thing.
That's the idea to me. That's the entire reason I'm doing what I'm doing, is to bring that out to people so that they can then be introduced to something new and then question and learn more about it for themselves. For some people, they might catch this one show. It might be the only show that they catch, but what we say here might be rolling around in their heads, and then 10 years from now, something blossoms.
Exactly.
It's just the way it happens, and we'll never know, and that's totally fine. That's not, why we do it.
But I want to say too, you mentioned my book Mediumship Mastery before, which I have here, Mediumship Mastery. But if people are interested, there's a lot of lessons in this. Exercises, this type of thing, and it's used worldwide as a textbook for training mediums. One of my students in Argentina, she translated it in Spanish, so they're using it down there. But it's very, 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 very good. I'm really into you can get it on Amazon. That's where it's available, Amazon. And Mediumship Mastery, everyone can open up more with it. I also have a YouTube channel as well, Steve Hermann Medium, which has is pretty much focused on mediumship education and everything. And I teach in person all over the place, all over the world. And I do a lot of online courses as well, which I have regularly, starting up on all different aspects of psychic development and mediumship. And then I also do the individualized mentoring or training with people.
Excellent. Do you find that there are many people who have difficulty grasping certain steps within the teachings that you provide? Do most people kind of slide through and kind of grasp things as they go? How do you find? Is it based on the individual?
Yeah, it's really based on the individual, because everyone's different. I mean, see, I'm pretty used to dealing with like all different types of people over the years. I mean, I've been to this now for decades. So
yeah,
you name the problem, I've kind of seen it multiple times over the years. Now, I would say there are some people, probably more common, that are very analytically oriented. And the real extreme cases are going to be people like engineers. That's usually a little harder to work with. It takes them a little bit longer because they've got to learn to get that out of the way. I mean, the other issue that sometimes people do have is they're very, 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 very open, and they can't really control it real well. Like they're empathic, they hear voices, they go to the supermarket and they see the dead person behind the cashier, they get flipped out, that kind of thing. And what someone like that needs to learn how to do is to close it down, how to discipline it. And actually, in either case, you need to learn how to discipline it. But it's like they're so open, and really you open this up, there's a time and a place for it, and you want there to be reverence for what's taking place as well. So I know they have like these TV shows where people just walk around, walking up to people. They go into Walmart and they go up to people and give them a message. That's a good way to get maced, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
these days,
that's not what you want to do. You really, there's a time and a place for it. And see, with mediumship, like the way I would work, it's very structured in the sense that I work with a team of spirits who regulate who comes through. They vet anyone coming through. They have it all figured out beforehand, planned out, orchestrated, and they're specialists with the communication. There's a difference between that approach with a trained medium or someone who's just sort of, they're open. It's like a leaky faucet. It's like 2 a.m. Everyone's drunk. Let's play with the Ouija board. Let anyone come through.
That's the chills right there, man. That's dangerous.
I was reading this one thing not too long, a couple months ago. There's these different, on Facebook, they have these different forums for mediumship. If you go to, for people interested in it, who are involved in it. And there's just some woman, and she's there. Oh, well, me and my husband, we went to the bar last night. I got drunk, and I was giving readings all night. And I'm thinking, like, anyway, this is like 101 type stuff. But, people just don't know they don't have a clue. So just because someone can open up to the spirit world doesn't mean that they should be giving readings.
Right.
They don't know. They're not disciplined. They don't have a clue of what they're doing. But I mean, there's people who just like get stoned out of their mind. They smoke lots of pot and open up the spirit world and stuff. And you really want your mind to be clear. You want your mind to vibrate on higher vibration, and like attracts like. So it's really, the reverence is really, really, really important for this stuff. Just because someone can open up doesn't. Everyone can be open if you want. But
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you see people that pick up a book or two on chakras, and then 2 weeks later they're offering readings online for $10 a pop. It's just there really is an incontinuity there that needs to be addressed, I think, in a fuller fashion. But you bring up a good point here. This is something that has stuck with me. Now, we haven't really talked much about her, but Joyce Orcutt was my mentor, and Steve Hermann was also a very good friend of Joyce Orcutt. And I'm not sure how far they work together, but I'm sure Steve could elaborate on that. But that being said, one of the things that Joyce always told me, and it's not because I was a bad kid that I was, you know, doing drugs or anything like that, but she would always say, if you open those doors, do not do it after you imbibe or you consume any sort of substance,
that's
because
correct.
you don't know,
want to do that.
You really don't have control, and you don't know who is going to come in there. And I know now today that even though that's what she said, she also meant in respect to vibration, because that's a big thing. A lot of times when you have something come in, I'm identifying it from that feeling or that vibration that it's carrying. It's not necessarily the audio aspect that I'm hearing. It's not visually what I'm seeing. It's that intuitive feeling about this energy that's in front of me. Most of the time, I can't say that anything has really been covered in a way that I couldn't see it as a whole. I mean, perhaps an interaction goes on, I find something more that I've already been convicted about to strengthen that. But other than that, you know, you don't really want to open doors unless you have a very clear mind. And I understand that there are some substances which will bring you much further and quicker into a lower vibration. Let's say, for example, alcohol, wherein something else, perhaps a medicine plant or a psychedelic, might do just the opposite. But either way, they're only for a very brief time, and whatever information is gathered in either one of those vibrations is very difficult to anchor and keep here in the vibration that you're usually, you know, living on. So that's curious, man. I think that's interesting you bring that up. Now, very quickly here, we're talking about a little bit of the identity of some of the entities that we're attempting to channel or connect with. And of course, there's a lot of discrepancy what goes into that. But a very heavy topic of conversation lately involving the identification and communicative source in respect to mediumship. It's been about extraterrestrial entities, people saying that they are able to definitively contact, click in, and basically have these downloads or channeling sessions wherein they are actually talking to something that is extraterrestrial. And I understand how this may work in an esoteric sense, wherein this particular being may still transcend space and time, or they may be still here physically and able to project their consciousness in a way that we do in terms of remote viewing and so forth. But what are your thoughts about the identifying of something like that versus the spirit world at large, which, you know, most people say that that's what they're familiar with?
Well, okay. There's a couple of things. First of all, Master Jesus taught, "In my Father's house are many mansions." So, do you think he's talking about housing developments in Worcester? No. he's talking about all these different levels of the spirit world. He's also talking about, you know, if we think just the physical universe, there's many different planetary systems and galaxies. You know, you just look through the telescopes with astronomy, you can see this, right? So that's a fact. So there are souls in all different types of bodies. So we have these human bodies every 7 years, right? Biologically, all the cells, all the molecules change, but the consciousness, you know, who we are, so we're participating in this. You know, we're functioning through the 5 physical senses in the body. So you have animals, you know, they have a different type of body, different type of senses. You know, if you're a giraffe, you can see what is it, like a mile away or something. You know, you can a hawk, you're up high, you can see the little mouse. You know, dogs can taste or smell things that we can't. So the senses are designed for the environment. So you have, I mean, I bring through animals all the time. That's pretty common. You name it. That there's a soul, even in the body of a plant. There's consciousness there. So it makes sense in these other physical planets that there's also individuals that live there as well. And you can certainly have ones that are intelligent, you know, that might have something interesting to say. So I can tell you my own experience, you know, in bringing through spirits. I've certainly had people who I've been doing sessions with that have had people who are not, I guess you'd call them, you know, they're not terrestrial, you know, they're extraterrestrial, they're from somewhere else, who are intelligent, this type of thing. Now, in saying that, I would still, just like I was talking about channeling celebrities or things like this, I would still be really skeptical about this. I remember I was watching a number of videos. I think he's out in LA. Some guy channels some like alien
Was it? Is this a formidable person? Somebody who's out there that people know?
Well, let me just tell you what I saw. Why it was a complete bunch of bunk. Okay, so this person is walking around talking in a silly voice, fully conscious, but he does this whole thing where anywhere the alien comes in, right? So with spirit, when you have spirit communication, when you're working with someone who they don't go inside your body, that's just not how it works. All right, that's just like 101. But people have this idea of that. So people will see something like this and they'll go, my God, this person's channeling whatever. And so it attracts people who want to hear this type of stuff. It's like entertainment. Now, if you go to Los Angeles, a lot of people move to that area because they want to get into the entertainment industry. Either they want to be a screenwriter or want to be an actor. Do you know how many people probably move there every year from all over the country who want to be actors?
Exactly.
And what do? They end up having to like work in some cafe or the restaurant, you know, that's their career, you know, they become a waiter. So what's a lot easier to do is you just get into channeling. And there's no one's going to question. You can just say, hey, I'm channeling whatever, you know, and I've channeled this alien from the future or some gorilla that lives on Venus who's coming in. And people won't question it at all. They just, oh my God, it's channeled. And there's really, as a medium, you can tune into someone else who's working, you know, it's through their energy field. You can actually sense, you know, you can connect with the personalities and spirit who are coming through. So it's objective reality. It's not just scientific. It's not just someone saying, hey, I'm channeling whatever. You know, I've got whoever it might be that's coming. Donald Duck's coming through and I've got Bart Simpson coming through. Well, if you do, he's going to be there, isn't he? So with the whole thing with the aliens, yeah, you could certainly bring through someone who's extraterrestrial, you know, in a subtle body, right? They're not physically, but in a subtle body, right. They could come through. The same way you could bring through your grandfather, or you could bring through some spirit teacher, you know, who's of human background, this type of thing. But I mean, I think even in that type of case, what's the message that they're saying?
Right.
You know, and how much of that's just the medium and how much of it's actually coming in. And you really have a lot of stuff that's purported to be channeled that's just, there's really not a lot of substance to it. It's pretty superficial, you know, compared to some of the great, you know, spiritual philosophers or teachers here in this physical world who've been embodied and taught. You read this stuff and God, this is like, and if it starts reading like a science fiction story, and so there's quite a few people, you know, they can be very, very, very lucrative. You can have a lucrative income. You know, you can do this kind of stuff. And people won't question it. But I would just suggest that people should question it and, you know, take it for what it is.
Everything with a grain of salt, folks. You heard it here.
And I would say the stuff I do, you know, I mean, like, you know, let's say you went to a session. Well, what, you know, can you relate to it? Or do I describe stuff, you know, that makes sense in relation to your life? Or if I bring people through, and you don't know what I'm talking about, then you go home and you ask your husband, he's like, yeah, oh my God, that's my stepdad, you know, and you just didn't know, you see. But it should be stuff ideally that can be validated, not just some type of nebulous. Does that
something
make sense?
to grab onto, you know? No, it absolutely does. It really does. And, you know, I think you've really hit the nail on the head in many ways when we're talking about this subject. Time will tell what things are really, you know, in respect to channeling and so forth. Perhaps as we go along, we're going to get clearer. But again, this would be probably in a more collective sense. Everything with a grain of salt, even with the healthy skepticism that I have. You know, we have to.
I mean, someone who's, I mean, I remember, you know, when I was little, like being into certain, you know, seeing different things that were like channeled or reading certain books. You know, just starting, not really knowing a lot, you know, it was like, wow, this is really cool. And then after you're into it, you go back and read the same book and it's like, wait a minute, this is a bunch of bunk. Like, you know, your perspective is one based on your own experiences, this type of thing. I mean, if you actually do this stuff, it's like with, I mentioned about, you know, fraudulent mediumship in a general sense. The average layperson isn't really going to know the difference. You see, that's why it's, you know, when you have someone who's a magician, they can go and actually sometimes see the way someone might be, fabricating things or doing tricks, because they're kind of trained for that type of thing because they do it themselves. But with mediumistic type of communications, I mean, even Edgar Cayce, I mean, who was a genuine medium, you go back into some of the stuff that was channeled by Edgar Cayce, it's some far out stuff. I mean, there's some pretty useful information, but there's some other stuff like, where the heck did this come from?
I think sometimes, what you were saying earlier with the filter and there being this synergistic creation that happens when we channel, I think some of that might have been Casey's filter. But that being said, a lot of times when you have prophets of sort predicting something that comes next, hey, listen, if we stayed narrow and straight on the path that we were at that very moment and everything ticked along perfectly, more than likely we would have that reality. But things can change. Things are always malleable. They're always flexible and always moving. So, what you might see in the future may be some augmentation of that particular prophecy, or it doesn't happen at all, or something completely different from left field occurs. There's so many different ways to look at that interpretation.
Predicting the future isn't so important. I mean, usually if that's done with precision, it's to really demonstrate the higher power, and it's also to, in some cases, encourage people along a particular line too. If the behavior is going to enhance that particular outcome from taking place.
I see what you're saying.
But there's definitely, if you go, I mean, I'm just using Casey again. I mean, there's stuff that, not any of his predictions, but just other stuff about past type of stuff, which is a bit questionable in my view. I
understand that.
It's one of these things where you kind of have to, take things for what it is. But oftentimes people will just swallow all of the Kool-Aid and they don't necessarily question it at all.
No, I've definitely observed the same thing. Very quickly before I lose it, I know that Kim Brower had asked this question a little while ago, and this was in regards to somebody's own psychic activity, perhaps having these things going on. She says, if it happens and you don't want it to, how can you stop it? Now, I think you touched a little bit on that in respect to, talking about people being open and having the discipline and the control over that. But how would somebody who is experiencing rogue psychic activity really get that under control? What would be one of the first steps? Perhaps I should ask you.
The big thing is, I mean, it's learning discipline, and it's a state of mind. It has to do with energetic types of boundaries. Where do your energies begin and end? I mean, and it can be just with people around you. Let's say you're around people, and naturally your energy fields are going to blend. And if you let yourself, you can really be affected by those types of things. And this happens all the time. People aren't even aware it's happening. The whole empathic type situation that can take place. So once someone starts getting aware of that, you can really be cautious. Like, okay, these are my own feelings, but I'm feeling this other energy, this other feeling, and that's not me. And being able to just keep yourself out of that, and also if someone is, let's say, working with other people, and there's a tendency, psychologically to want to fix other people's problems or get involved that way, out of genuine compassion. The compassion part's good, but you want to be able to be neutral. Just like if someone worked as a therapist, and they've got like every day from 9 to 5, all these manic, depressive, suicidal people coming to them. Well, you want to have compassion, but if you're not neutral, if you need to be there for people, but not take on the conditions, and not feel the need like you've got to get energetically and mentally into the person's life, into their energy field, and fix things for them.
Is there any exercise that we could do wherein we're feeling this in an environment to separate our own feelings from somebody else's? Do you talk about that at all in any of your literature that you put out? Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty. What's that question in a general sense, I'd say, is asked is a concern that really affects, because it affects a lot of people. I mean, someone who's like really analytically oriented, and there's certainly a lot of people like that, generally don't have this as a problem. But most people who get into mediumship, I mean, they tend to be artistically oriented, or they're in touch with their creative minds. So it's very, 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 very common to have that as an issue. What I always teach is, I emphasize, the importance of learning how to raise your own vibration through prayer and through meditation. And in doing so, if you're coming from a really much higher vibration, and that has to be something that you're doing regularly, really sustained, energies on a lower level aren't going to affect you the same way. Do you understand? Like if you're kind of on the lower
Yes.
level of yourself, you're going to be impact is going to be
do one of these. Yep.
Yeah. So, and now this isn't, when I talk about this stuff, it's not like a quick fix. There's
Right.
It has to be a lot of, you know, being aware of this all the time. But I think also just being aware energetically of your own space, being able to kind of pull your energy field in, your aura. There's different psychic protection types of mental exercises people can do too. I mean, one thing which I think is kind of neat that might work for some people, let's say they really are feeling a lot of stuff around them, is just mentally to feel as though they're wearing a very, very, very heavy winter coat that goes all the way down to their, you know, hips, you know, big, heavy winter boots, big, heavy winter gloves, and the scarf, and, you know, the heavy hat and all this. Now, what will happen is it'll pull your energy field in a lot more.
Huh.
You know, it's kind of like closes yourself off or closes yourself down energetically. Now, the other thing too is, I know for myself, because I can easily feel other people's energy. And, you know, you could walk into a shopping mall, or you walk into a bar, or you walk into a place where the energy is just either really bad or it's just scattered. You don't want to take that stuff all on, because you'll feel it in your solar plexus. You might feel it right. Like, I can think of going into places years ago, you know, feeling like being kicked right in my chest, my heart chakra, just because the energy is just so heavy there. So you know, you might have a job where you have to be around those energies. I mean, maybe you work at a nightclub, and there's bands playing, and it's like loud music and all these people intoxicated. Well, that's really cruddy energy. So you've got to kind of learn to kind of be in that space and not be affected too much by it. And sometimes someone might just need to leave.
Yeah,
know,
no,
and
that certainly happened.
You know, remove oneself from it, or, you know, go out and then come back in, and then when you get home, take a shower.
And I'll just add to that, when you do this sort of activity, if you're someone who's used to feeling everything in your environment, and believe me, for some of us who do, it just seems like a normal part of our life. We still take on certain conditions and we work through them on our own, not realizing that we picked them up from someone else. But when you decide to actually put that cloak on and you close yourself off, you might be a little surprised at the numbness that you feel for a moment there. Almost like, I mean, you've made the conscious choice to not feel at a certain moment, but you might all of a sudden say, oh my God, all of a sudden I can't feel anything. Am I going to be able to feel anything ever again? What have I just done? At least this is something I experienced, and other people that I've spoken to kind of had that shock there, because they were so used to feeling everything. And then the moment they made the decision and it clicked, it just
yeah.
cut off.
Well, I think that's kind of neat you're saying that, because what I've seen with a lot of people is they have to have all this external stimuli, like playing music really loud, watching TV, internet, you know, whatever it might be. It's like all outside themselves. So if you take that all away, what happens? They have to go inside themselves. And that's what you really want to do. Now there's some Buddhist groups, for example, they'll do like, actually buried, not that far in Worcester, there's two different groups. You know, they have a whole, you know, you go there for 15 days, go there for 9 days, go there for a month, and no talking at all.
Oh, I've heard of this. Yes, I knew somebody who actually did this.
Yeah, there's one in Shelburne, Massachusetts. They're all over the place. They're different anyway. But so you have this whole silent type of retreat, and it forces you to go inside. You have to listen to yourself, and you have to get out of the way, you know? And that's a quality and a strength that, in a general sense, people lack. Because people are just so, you know, I've got to play the video games, you know, I've got to play games. You know, I know people that they're on like playing like League of Legends or these games for like, you know, 20 hours a day. They're addicted to video games, you know, online games.
Oh, yeah.
You probably know some people like that.
Oh, of course I do. And I mean, I love my video games too. I'm more of a retro guy myself, but yeah, I balanced it out. It's, you know,
exactly. It's a good thing. All of this stuff is good. I mean, you know, music, everything is good. But at the same time, if you never spend time going inside, it's a problem. Now with mediumship, I know for myself, I've always been my own best friend. You know, when I was little, I spent a lot of time alone or out in nature, things like that. So consequently, you end up just naturally going inside yourself a lot more. And I'm not really myself really into large crowds and stuff, just because I like kind of like going inside myself a lot more.
No, I can totally feel you on that. For myself, I'm more balanced only because my experiences growing up as a musician and then becoming a traveling musician, there were many times that I wanted that solitude. And because I was in a place that was very busy externally, I had to literally go within myself to find that peace. But that exercise helped me out in other areas of my life, you know, maybe there was something traumatic going on wherein I could go back in myself and then look at it from the outside, almost in a sense, without being emotionally involved, and try to, you know, be more objective about it to understand what I was going through. So that's a really practical way to, you know, attempt to get inside yourself. Just, you know, for the hell of it, take one day where you say, okay, I'm off today. I don't really have to talk to anybody. I mean, if I could if I wanted to, and, you know, fill my day, but let's just not talk at all. And let's see what comes in.
We need to steal your phone, your iPhone, and then you can't.
Yeah, there's going to be other distractions. That's why a lot of these are retreats, and they'll go out into the woods where there aren't those sort of distractions. And I couldn't agree more with that. I think a lot of people need that sort of shock to get us going here. Really quick, one more time here. We have another question. This was from a little while back, but Joey Hayes would like to know, any thoughts on lost loved ones in dreams, but it's like you're just back as if the person never went, and you're nearly not paying attention to the person. It's horrible when you wake up. So I think what he's getting at there, guys, is that he's seeing loved ones in dreams, feeling like that they're still here with us, connecting with them, then waking up and realizing this reality that we're living in. Any thoughts on that, Steve?
Well, first of all, when you're asleep, your unconscious mind is totally open and your analytical mind's out of the way. And, you know, if you're in the spirit world and want to communicate with someone here, you probably aren't going to be able to get them to go to a medium. But if they're asleep, you can potentially connect with them in that state. And so if someone, let's say they do connect with a loved one while they're asleep, it's very vivid, that type of psychic dream, compared to an actual just regular unconscious dream that's a product of your unconscious mind. Someone can potentially even go out of their body while they're asleep and connect with loved ones and have conversations. And, you know, it's almost more like sleepwalking when it takes place, you know, the whole experience. But now I can't really say why that would be an unhappy experience, other than if someone was disappointed, the fact that, oh my gosh, I really want to be with my dad and he's passed over, and this type of thing. But really, you can imagine, if you're in the spirit world, how significant that would mean for you to be able to connect with someone.
Do you think it would be more significant on the spirit side or on our side to have an experience?
Well, I think a little bit of both. I mean, it depends. But I know in the spirit world, I mean, gosh, I mean, everyone, you know, we have kids or we have families, you know, with people we really care about and love. Well, it's really hard if you go to the spirit world, because you're aware of them, but they're not really necessarily aware of you. And even if they are, it's hard. You can't hug them. You can't hold them. They can't hear your voice the same way. Now, you can impress their minds, and maybe to some extent they'll register it. You can learn how to do that. You know, you can take classes, and there's people who will help you with it. You know, and if you can really manipulate your loved one to go to a medium, and let's hope they go to a good one. So you've got a half hour to potentially make contact, or 5 minutes to make contact. There's a limitation there, you see. And then the medium's mind's involved. Maybe you're not in the same wavelength as the medium, so it just isn't going to be as strong. Or the medium is really someone who just microwavable medium. They don't have any training. You know, they got their PhD on a Saturday afternoon. You know,
I've known people like that too. Unfortunately,
yeah, exactly.
They don't stay around for very long, most of them. But
well,
they're out there.
Get your high school diploma from back of a comic book. You know.
Yeah.
So but it's a big deal to be able to come through. But when you also think, let's just say you had, you know, family who were, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, or they were atheists, they just thought this was a bunch of bunk, or were against it for some reason, they'd never go to a medium. So if you can come through in the dream state, that's a blessing.
Okay, that makes sense. That might be easier to contact somebody, is perhaps what you're saying, rather than us on this end trying to go through the motions and, you know, break down those barriers of culture and belief in order to make this sort of contact.
Some people just aren't, they're just not open to it, unfortunately, here.
Well, your guard is certainly down when you're dreaming. For most of us, we're unaware of it. Very quickly here, Stargate Traveler would like to know, what do you think about reincarnation and people who remember having lived other lives?
Well, reincarnation is a fact. So the soul's eternal, and there's all these different bodies, and you can be in different bodies based on your evolution, based on your consciousness and development. So, you know, we come into this physical life, we have a subtle body, and all of these tendencies we have. Now, when I do readings, when I work with people, spirit comes through, the higher spirits, and they'll talk about people's past lives. That's pretty common. And they'll talk about blocks. They'll talk about certain tendencies that people have in the present, and why. You know, what are the reasons from prior physical incarnations and everything.
Well, are
So,
we really experiencing a past life when we get into something like that, or something in the future, or are we just experiencing the now? Because it's my understanding that we live all of our lives and experiences all at once in a respect, because we're going to go out of the world of linearity here to talk about this. How does that work in your perception in respect to interpreting the different
the
embodiments?
thing is first of all, I mean, okay, the time's relative. So what we're experiencing here is very slow and sluggish here, and it's linear. But if you go to the spirit worlds, there's also time that it's just different. You know, it's not. You know, if you go to other physical worlds as well, you know, we talk about Einstein's theory of relativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I suppose you can think everything's happening all at once, but no, there's actually, just like if we were talking about your childhood. Now, are you experiencing your childhood right now? I mean, I suppose in theory, but no, you're focused right now. So you could also talk about prior to this life in the material world, you've had different bodies, physical bodies, and those experiences in those physical bodies continue to influence you today. You know, certain traits, certain patterns of thinking, which might be really good or maybe really not so good, depending what you've experienced. It's all about conditioning. So I know if we study, you know, we go back in our own environment, there's certain things that we do that we pick up, good or bad, and it's a result of things that have happened to us when we're little.
But is it the same in the spirit world, wherein it's cumulative, or things culminate as time goes on to be who you are now? Or
yeah. You take these qualities in with you and everything. Certain tendencies, it's karma and everything. Now there might be certain things that are really emphasized for different reasons, but you know, based on our desires, based on our consciousness, we get put in a suitable material situation to experience those things. And everything.
Yes.
That's really that's why I like the whole idea. Like with yoga, what yoga means to connect with God. It's all about developing devotion of God, developing higher spirituality to get out of this place and never have to come back. Because good karma and bad karma, it's all bad karma because it keeps us here, right? This is like a motel, this material world. So we come here and we think, well, I'm going to stay here forever and acquire all this stuff and have such a good time. But we have to leave after a couple of days. We get kicked out. You know, we're going to kick the bucket. Doesn't matter what you do. You know, you're going to have to go to the spirit. So it's important to really devote as much time and energy to your spiritual growth while you're here. Because, the other stuff, I mean, understandably, if someone's really evolved, they probably wouldn't come here in most cases. But all of that stuff, it doesn't really get you anywhere. You know, and the spirits that come through will talk about that, you know, in terms of what they've learned, or you learn a lot with mediumship about psychology, about people, how they've messed up. You know, your grandmother might have just been a really nice lady, but she's also kind of had some problems. So when she comes through, she might talk about those problems. Why? Because maybe you've got the same issues.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe even because of her, you see. So
interesting.
She can actually encourage you to kind of see things differently, or to change some of the thought patterns or behavior that's taking place.
Is there any point after maybe we passed on, or, you know, that you've talked to in respect to the spirit world, wherein we actually rise above duality? Or is this something more pervasive within experiences that go into the vibrations up and down?
Well, you know, we also want to go to God at the top, and there's a lot of different levels of the spirit world. So I know in my own work, I work with a lot of different levels of spirit. I would say the individuals that I'm working with, it's more concerned for helping people here in this world. So it's not so much about, I mean, certainly there's people higher up who kind of oversee it all, though, and everything. But definitely, if someone really goes to a higher type of level, they're not going to need to have to come back and everything.
But they won't experience any sort of duality. Again, and this is a very subjective question. But
I guess the thing is there's some ideas that people have that you just lose your individuality, right? That everyone is just one, but really it's simultaneous oneness and difference. So we're individuals. So it's just like you have, you know, the sun. We think of the sun as God, but then you have all the sunshine, all the rays of the sun. Now they're qualitatively the same, but quantitatively they're not. But we all have individuality. But real individuality isn't an impermanent material individuality that's based on stuff which is temporary. You know, that I'm Caucasian in this life, or I'm, you know, I'm from Massachusetts, or that type of thing.
I think a lot of times when people or spirit comes through, they're using, as you mentioned before, whatever that personality was or a facet of it to help the person know that it's definitely them. But, you know, as much as I've researched and learned, at first, there is some sort of ego dissolving at some point, but you don't entirely lose who you are. And
that's the false ego. We always have identity. You see, what you're saying is totally true. You know, what happens is we have this false persona. Now, just keep in mind, for identification, they may present themselves. I mean, obviously, we're a lot more than just the role that we're playing here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as you grow more and you get more in touch with that, you know, you're going to really be more in touch with yourself as pure spirit. And you do have individuality there, but it's not based on a body, like a physical body, you know, limited temporary type of conception, basically, which is really ego based, you know, in terms of selfish. But real identity is in relationship to God, serving God. You're doing stuff for God. You're not doing stuff just for yourself.
Makes sense.
That's on a higher level. And generally speaking, people here, you know, it takes a lot of work.
Well, it's funny too, because I have a spirit with me who is, or always has been, I'm not really sure. I haven't sat down and talked to him about this yet, although he's waiting for me to. His name is Eric. And he's actually from Elisa Medhus is his mother. I don't know if you know her name, but she's from Channeling Eric. And essentially, she does a lot of work with him, healing and channeling and so forth. But he guided me towards her back in 2014, before I even had any real thought of doing what I'm doing today. And it sort of was on the back burner for me for a long time. And then he just emerged with what seemed to be the right time. And I interviewed his mother and everything kind of rolled from there. So the reason I'm bringing him up is that anytime that I'm allowing myself to be aware of his presence, because he's literally always here, I do see this physicality. I do see his face. Now, keep in mind, I've never met him in physicality. I didn't know him in life, but that verification in way of visual aspects, I don't even necessarily need, because I can just feel this energy, which gives me a different picture. It's something I couldn't draw for you. I couldn't describe, but it's an incredibly familiar, knowing of this individual. But yet this spirit has reached different echelons in the spirit world and has even moved his way up into an archangel status, which to me means that he has shifted into a higher vibration. I don't necessarily have to have the name for it, but yet he's still kind of traversing these different vibrations to work with many, many, many different people. I find that incredible, man.
Well, that's it's all organized there pretty well. I mean, they have communities there. They have cities. They have, you know, you have service. There's things you do. I mean, it's not like you just sit around floating in the cloud all day with the harp. And it's not like one of these
nice,
things. Though. Well, I mean, but sometimes people have this whole idea that you just merge and you lose your individuality. You become one. Everything is love. It's all one bright light, one bright white light, and that's just a bunch of bunk. That's not how it works. All right. If you needed 50 years of psychotherapy and you didn't get it when you're here in the physical world, you have to get it when you get over there.
I've heard this kind of thing too.
And you have to work on things. And I mean, it's ugly, you know. I mean, there's a lot of ugliness with you, it goes into the spirit world and you get healing, because there are really loving understanding. But it's not like you don't have to take responsibility for things and work on things. And people sometimes overlook that. You know, they just think about, oh, everything is so nice. And
it's a definitely continuation in certain respects. But whatever you're doing, you know, you want to call it karma, you want to call it cause and effect. There is a very measurable action there that has a reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's the law of the universe, law of God.
And in this case, I think on the highest levels, we kind of look at some of the things that we've done when we're deciding to incarnate again, or how we might do it, who might be involved in that play, and say, well, maybe I can do something better for this person. And to me, it's us. It's the individual, the soul itself that decides what we're going to experience as karma. Now, that being said, just because you might have been a slave for a lifetime doesn't necessarily mean that you did something bad to warrant that. You may have actually picked and chosen that experience on purpose because you wanted the experience of that, and perhaps you'll have something different in relation to it later on.
It's all really perfect. So, I mean, really, all experiences, all the bad experiences, is to help us to get closer to God. So, like good karma, bad karma, it's all really pretty bad if it keeps us here. But if we use those experiences to really, it's like a prison here, a prison for souls that aren't that high, but it's also like a school because it gives all those simultaneously, all those individuals an opportunity to advance and grow.
Yes.
It's all about love and sharing and everything. So it's really, but we have free will, so we can spend a lot of time here coming back. And
that is true.
And that's not necessarily a wise thing to do, but hey, what do you do with little kids?
Hey, well, if they keep having to repeat the lesson, then that's exactly what it is.
They don't have to, but that's what happens.
No, you're right. They don't. It's definitely a choice in the end, somewhere along the line. But listen, Steve, we are out of time for the evening. Yeah, can you believe it? It just went by so quickly. God, I don't even. I wish I wish the time didn't exist, because that's what it feels like every single show. But I want to thank you very much for coming on. Before we go, would you mind telling everybody once again where they can find you and where can they purchase your book?
Yeah, well, I'm online, Steve Hermann, medium.com, and I've got a YouTube channel. If you look up Steve Hermann Medium, please subscribe to that, because the more subscribers, the better. But that's on mediumship education.
Yes.
And I have my book, Mediumship Mastery, the ultimate guide, and this is good for people who are experienced as well as novice, but it's on Amazon. And then the other thing is I have a lot of courses online as well as in person. So if you're interested, and I do individualized training, coaching, or mentoring as well, and I do a lot of private sessions, group sessions all over the world. So,
and just to remind you guys, it can be done remotely. So please definitely inquire within. I'm sure Steve would love to hear from you and work with you.
In all aspects of it. And I'm pretty approachable.
Yes, I could tell. This has been a fantastic time, Steve.
Yeah, your show is awesome. It's a really great blessing to be able to come on here and to participate. I really appreciate you having me as a guest.
Well, thank you very much. But the gratitude is what I have for you, my friend. You have been the star tonight. And again, I appreciate everything that you've shared in the way of insight, experience, and you've given us some clarity on certain subjects. And this is why I continue to revisit certain topics over and over again, because people have different perspectives and different experiences within those. And I look for those similarities to make up those congruences. And I really enjoy what Steve had to say tonight. So once again, man, thank you very much. If you'd like, hang out for a moment. I'll say my proper goodbyes off camera. If you have to go, I'll understand that too. But for the moment, I'm just going to take you off here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, mate.
God bless you. Thanks so much.
Cheers. All right, folks. Thank you very much for being here with us tonight. This was a really, really lofty sort of conversation here where we were reaching for the stars, all woo intact. But listen, it's again about giving us something to think about and then exploring each one of these branches. I did try to get to every question that was in the chat. And if you had written in capital letters, there was a better chance that I was seeing it. So I want to thank everybody for their participation tonight. Bob M., Philip Blair, Mike Johnson, Jill Tate, Mr. DB Cooper 77, Sir Wolf 67, Kim Brower. Thank you. Ben Crable, Joey Hayes, Stargate Traveler, Neats B, Ellie M. Who else am I missing here? We had Lockbeard. And thank you guys who are just coming to the show for the first time and giving us a chance over here. I really appreciate seeing you involved in the chat, and I welcome all sorts of criticism, constructive or otherwise. So please feel free to leave a comment down below, and definitely like and subscribe and share the videos. It helps us grow here at Dark Hour Paranormal and continue to do exactly what we do. And speaking of that, I want to thank my super chatters tonight for their generosity and donations. And I'd also like to thank my moderators for keeping the peace in the chat room. Thank you very much, guys. We will be back next week with Zelia Edgar, who's a fantastic paranormal investigator, ufologist, and all-around interesting woman. I mean, you guys are going to absolutely love her. She's very frank, very straightforward, very logical, and yet has an incredible right brain perception of so many of the things that we talk about here. So once again, guys, thank you very much for being here. Until next time, stay inquisitive, stay experienced, and stay the hell out of the kitchen. I don't know. I still got to work on that third one. There. All right, guys. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, yes, I am forgetting something. Number one, GUFON is on in 1/2 hour. Go and check him out on YouTube. His channel, GUFON, 10 o'clock Eastern Pacific, will be 7 o'clock. All right. Go and check him out. Also, Third Phase of Moon. I very briefly saw you guys there in the chat. Thank you for being with us tonight. I always love seeing you hanging out at Dark Hour Paranormal. And you did mention that we do have an album coming out, and we have been shooting music videos to correspond with this album. I do believe very soon you guys will see the results of that, but I can't say too much about it other than I am beyond excited for everyone to check this stuff out. So keep your eye out for that, and we will catch you next time, guys. Thank you so much. Ciao. Emmanuel Syme, Lorraine, Ash Dobbs, Bob M., Brandy Urson. Thank you, guys.